welcome to the deep dive. It's quite striking how we often talk about huge global issues like climate change or business pressures or tech advancements, almost as if they're totally separate things.
Right.
But what happens when you step back, you start to see this intricate web connecting them all in ways that are really quite critical and maybe surprising. So that's our aim today. We've gathered some really fascinating sources looking at everything from like fundamental shifts in the Earth's water cycle all the way to the potential risks of geoengineering and even how things like solar flares could impact our digital world.
A pretty wide scope then.
It is.
Yeah.
But our mission here is to pull out the really key connections between these big forces and the business world. What do you actually need to know professionally?
We'll try to cut through the noise, make it focused.
Definitely. No data deluge, just the crucial insights.
Okay, so where do we start? For me, what really leaps out is just how interconnected these seemingly separate issues are. It's like they're different symptoms of the same underlying stress on our global systems.
Like the water cycle you mentioned.
Precisely. It's not just about temperatures rising slightly. Global warming is fundamentally altering how water moves around the planet. We're seeing more intense droughts in some places.
Which we hear about a lot.
We do. And also disruptions to major ocean currents, ones that play a massive role in regulating temperatures globally.
Okay, so let's unpack that disruption of the water cycle. It sounds like it's much more than just, say, dry riverbeds. How does that actually filter down into the business world?
Well, think about how fundamentally reliant so many industries are on stable water. It's huge.
Agriculture, obviously.
Agriculture is the big one, yes. Intensified droughts hit farmers hard, and that creates this domino effect, right? Across the whole food and beverage sector, textiles to anything using agricultural products.
So less water means lower crop yields.
Lower yields, higher prices for commodities, and the real risk of actual shortages. But it goes beyond farming. Lots of manufacturing needs a lot of water.
True.
And then there's the unpredictable weather that comes with this disruption. That causes major headaches for logistics, for transport, for just managing day-to-day operational risks for almost any business.
Right. Which I suppose ties directly into the next point, this worrying trend of shrinking arable land. It feels like a bit of a double whammy, doesn't it? Less water and less usable land.
It really is. One source put it starkly. It threatens everything we eat, drink, breathe. It's a mix of things.
Yeah.
Underground water sources drying up, deserts spreading.
Desertification, yeah.
And pollution degrading the soil quality. So for businesses, especially those linked to agriculture, it's a growing threat, a direct threat to production.
And then beyond that to global food security itself.
Absolutely. Widespread food shortages have massive economic ripple effects. Consumer prices, market stability, even geopolitical tensions. It affects everyone.
So facing challenges this big, it makes sense. People start looking for large-scale fixes. Geoengineering often comes up in these discussions. Honestly, it sounds like something out of sci-fi.
It does have that sort of feel, yeah. And that's why it's important to look at it critically. You've got ideas like solar radiation management, basically trying to reflect sunlight back into space.
Like giant space mirrors.
Metaphorically, maybe. Or technologies to pull carbon dioxide directly out of the air. They sound tempting, like these technological silver bullets.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
There is. Big risks. A major concern right now is the almost complete lack of international rules or oversight for these kinds of planetary scale experiments.
So we could be messing with complex systems without fully understanding the consequences.
Exactly. We might trigger unintended environmental damage, maybe even worse than the problems we're trying to solve. It's that danger of the quick fix creating even bigger, more complex problems later on.
It feels a bit like, trying to fix a dripping tap by smashing the main water pipe.
That's not a bad analogy, actually.
Now, something else that came up in the sources was this idea of technocracy and how that might influence climate action. That's not a term you hear bandied about every day.
No, it isn't. In this context, it basically means a shift where decision-making power moves more towards specialized technical experts.
Okay.
And potentially away from broader democratic input. The potential risk highlighted is that if you prioritize only expert opinions, you might accidentally sideline other important voices.
Like local communities, grassroots concerns.
Precisely. Or perspectives that focus more on long-term ecological balance rather than just technical efficiency. If you marginalize those voices, you could end up with climate policies that aren't really effective or fair on the ground.
So it's a balance. You need the expertise, but you also need that broad buy-in and local knowledge to make things actually work.
That's the idea. It's about ensuring a wide range of perspectives shape the path forward, especially for something as huge as climate change.
Okay, changing tack slightly here.
Yeah.
To something that might seem totally unrelated at first. Solar flares. How on earth do they connect to business risks?
Ah, well, this is where you really see how interconnected and frankly vulnerable our modern world is.
Okay.
Think about our dependence on technology, satellites, for instance. Communication, navigation, weather forecasting, all vital for business.
Absolutely essential, yeah.
Well, really powerful solar flares, this increased solar activity, can actually damage satellites, knock them out.
Wow.
And it doesn't stop there. They could potentially cause massive disruptions to power grids on Earth, widespread blackouts.
Okay, that sounds bad.
It would be. Imagine data centers going down, transport networks grinding to a halt, supply chains just breaking. Our reliance on these interconnected digital systems makes us surprisingly vulnerable to stuff happening millions of miles away on the sun.
That's quite sobering. A surge of energy from the sun could cripple terrestrial businesses. So, when you weave all these threads together, the climate shifts, the resource pressures, these risky tech solutions, the way decisions get made, even solar activity, it paints a really complex picture for the business world.
It does. Intricate and, yes, concerning. And I think the core message, the real takeaway here, is the urgency. We urgently need to understand these interconnected risks.
It's not just one thing anymore.
Not at all. And businesses need to be proactive, developing and putting in place strategies to mitigate these risks, to build resilience. It's not just governments or NGOs. It requires individual companies and collective action across the whole commercial sector.
Right. So let's quickly recap. We've seen climate change isn't just environmental. It's a fundamental business risk. It affects resources, infrastructure, even policymaking.
And the potential solutions like geoengineering or shifts in governance like technocracy, they bring their own set of challenges and potential pitfalls. Nothing simple here.
Absolutely. Which really brings us to the final thought, the question for everyone listening today. Given all these interconnected challenges, we've talked about the water, the land, the tech risks, the policy shifts. What strategic adaptations should your business, your organization be prioritizing right now? How do you build genuine resilience and long-term sustainability in this landscape?
That's the crucial question. We really encourage you to think about those implications. And if you want to go deeper, definitely check out the original sources we drew from. It's clear that navigating what's coming requires a really broad, informed perspective.